Joining us now is Gloria La Riva in San Francisco. She's coordinator of the Cuba and Venezuela Solidarity Committee. It's been a very fluid couple of days in Venezuela. Talk to me about the events that we've seen in the last 2 days. You saw a number of countries jumping in yesterday to recognize Guaido as the leader of Venezuela. Today, you have the military saying they're backing Maduro, and you have the Kremlin warning the U.S. not to meddle. Where do you see things as they stand now?
It's important to understand that the Latin American countries that are recognizing Guaido, who is an illegitimate named president by Trump, are right-wing governments, and part of whom have been installed by parliamentary coups, as we call them, in the last few years. It's an attempt by the U.S. government to revert all the progressive governments and developments that have taken place in Latin America for the last 20 years. And the U.S. sees key to this process as overthrowing the government of President Nicolas Maduro, largely because of the oil, which is the largest reserves in the world. So the vast majority of countries in the world are supporting President Maduro, and including big nations like Russia and China and Mexico in Latin America.
So, Gloria, let me ask you this. The U.S. Secretary of State is still trying to pressure other countries to follow suit, follow the U.S. They're pledging millions in emergency aid to this parallel government, if you will. He's pushing for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council for this weekend. Talk to me about the pressure the United States is applying, and how does that influence things?
Well, in addition to the political pressure internationally, the biggest part is the economic war that the U.S. has engaged in for many years, first under the Chavez administration and now against Maduro. It is so severe, it would take a day to explain, but just in the last year, 5 main medical shipments that Venezuela needed for its population, one of them being all the insulin that the insulin-dependent patients, more than 60,000 Venezuelans, all the vaccination for the children of Venezuela early last year, and 3 other medical shipments were blocked by the U.S. government by prohibiting those companies and banks from accepting the transactions. It's not that Venezuela doesn't have the money, and it's estimated that some $25 billion has been lost by the Venezuelan economy in 2018 because of U.S. sanctions. It's a euphemism for blockade.
Well, let me ask you this.
It's a euphemism for genocide.
Let me ask you this follow-up question. Maduro cutting ties with the U.S., ordering diplomats out of the country. Some supporters of Maduro are warning that he really needs to be cautious and not to do anything to justify U.S. military action. Is he playing into the hands of the U.S.? Because you have this tweet from Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, saying U.S. diplomats should present their credentials to this other president. Maduro has no authority to expel anyone. And trust me on this one, he says, if Maduro is stupid enough to test Trump by harming any U.S. diplomat, the consequences would be swift and severe.
Well, Maduro has always called for tightening the blockade against Cuba. He is of the extreme right wing, and he advocates U.S. overthrow. We have to keep in mind that the National Assembly, which the U.S. recognizes, this right-wing assembly, is made up of many people who were coup plotters in 2002 against Chavez. And Chavez and Maduro have called continually for negotiations, even against those who plotted. Negotiations, peaceful talks, peace talks, come to the table. There have been agreements made, and then suddenly they're broken by the opposition because the U.S. pressure. The U.S. has really directed much of the actions of the opposition, first telling them in different referenda or gubernatorial or municipal or presidential elections to either run or not run. In the last presidential election, I think the U.S. was fed up with the Bolivarian government, the pro-Maduro and pro-Chavez population. The U.S. was fed up with majority electoral turnouts. And so when they don't like an election, they decide we're going to do away with it.
Well,
the last presidential election was contested.
Gloria,
yes?
I'm sorry, we've run out of time. We're going to have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us from San Francisco.